Now that the election is over, what does Donald Trump's win mean for housing as we look forward to 2025, 2026, and beyond? A lot of homeowners and home buyers alike have sort of been frozen the last few months trying to decide, are they better off waiting to make a real estate decision, or are they better off making a real estate decision sooner before the election? So now that there's a favorite, or I should say a decision in the election, we can look forward and start to paint a clear picture of what changes can be coming to the market in 2025. I'm going to share them with you so you can plan your next move or your next purchase a little bit better. So one of the things that Donald Trump did during his campaign is he was pretty clear about what his intentions were for housing and how he was going to accomplish his goals. Both candidates had expressed a desire to solve or help the housing affordability challenges we have, albeit they had very different approaches. So here are some of the things that Donald Trump told us that he was going to do during his campaign. So the first one, mass deportations. We're already seeing the effects of his election in private prison stocks and secure transportation and tracking stocks. So we can kind of assume at this point that there are going to be mass deportations beginning sometime in January or February. Specifically, we're just concerned not what your opinions or beliefs are on the matter, but specifically how's it going to affect housing? And there's two ways that this can affect housing. The first one is going to pull some demand out of markets that are heavily or more heavily populated by undocumented immigrants. So these people tend to, for the most part, be in the entry-level housing market and own entry-level homes. So if there is a substantial deportation that takes place, we can expect a higher supply of entry-level homes or lower demand for entry-level homes in the markets that have a higher concentration of undocumented migrants. So that's generally speaking for affordability and people trying to purchase homes, that's generally a good thing. However, there is a other side of that or a consequence of mass deportations, and that is undocumented migrants that are more likely to be deported make up a disproportionate number of tradesmen and construction workers that build homes. So it's very possible that while you have a cooling effect that makes entry-level homes more affordable by removing some of the demand, removing the undocumented migrants, that could be offset by the fact that you have less inventory coming online or new homes coming online slower because of a labor shortage within the construction trades. So, if we're looking at purchasing a entry-level home, are we better off waiting or doing something sooner? And it's probably going to be a wash. We're probably not, as specifically as a result of the deportation efforts, we're not likely to really see any demand change or supply change in entry-level homes. Any demand that might be cooled is probably going to be offset by labor shortages. So the next thing that Donald Trump proposed was regulatory reforms to boost housing supply. And this basically means simplifying the permitting process. This means easing requirements for home builders or people who want to become developers. This means creating easier access to materials for home building. And generally speaking, the removing some regulatory reforms should speed up the pace at which new homes can be built, and it should make it easier for people who want to build homes to get in and build homes. How much of an effect is this going to have? It kind of depends. Donald Trump specifically said in his campaign he thinks it could have a 30% reduction in cost, the reforms and regulations that he could remove and do once he's in office. So he thinks he can reduce the cost to build a home, the time to build a home by 30%. National Association of Home Builders says it's really closer to maybe 12% if you could reduce some of the costs by removing regulations. But Also, removing regulations not only could save maybe 12% in cost, I think that's pretty well established that you could cut 12% in cost and expense out of the home building process. The other thing it could do is it could speed up the time. And, if you could remove actual expense, but also speed up time, maybe you do get closer to a 15 or a 20% reduction in cost to build. So that's an item that potentially could actually affect housing affordability. We could see homes coming on the market being cheaper, home builders able to build homes faster and for less money and passing that savings along to buyers. So could potentially see some benefit there. So what does that mean if you're looking to build a trade-up home, a home in the 500s? Most home builders right now are building stuff in the upper fours, low fives as entry level. So if you're looking at that entry-level price point new construction home, should I buy now or should I wait? This might suggest that you should wait until late 2025 or maybe early 2026 when some of the homes that have been impacted and builders and developers and developments that have been impacted by these regulatory reforms actually are bringing homes online, and maybe you could pick up something cheaper then. I would assume the interest rate stays where it is today. We'll talk more about interest rates in a minute. The next thing to think about, utilizing federal land for housing development. This is something else that Donald Trump has suggested, making some federal lands currently unavailable for development, available for residential home development. It kind of depends on where the land is and at what cost and how fast that happens. Ultimately, this is something that in a supply-demand scenario, if you increase the supply of land, you decrease the demand for it, therefore decrease the price of it. Therefore, if you're decreasing the price of the land, ultimately, in theory, you're decreasing the price of the house that's brought to market. It's going to be hard to accomplish, and it's going to be hard to accomplish with any speed. And the availability of these federal lands that potentially could be converted and made available, are there employment centers nearby? Are there transportation infrastructure in the area? Are they places where people actually want to live and need houses? It's really unclear, and there's not folks that are really thinking this is going to have a major impact on housing. So probably not going to want to wait or delay specifically to see the outcome of making federal lands available for building. The other thing, and the final thing Donald Trump promised to do, was lower the interest rate. And this is a big thing that we're going to really discuss because ultimately mortgage interest rates follow inflation because the bond market follows inflation, and mortgage-backed security bonds are what the mortgage interest rate borrowers pay are based off of. So can Donald Trump affect inflation? Possibly, if he can improve the supply chain, bring down the cost of manufacturing goods and services in the U.S., bring down energy costs. All these things factor into making a more affordable, lower inflation environment, and that could bring down interest rates. However, he has speculated, and some people have said that he's going to directly influence the Federal Reserve to lower their interest rate. And something we've seen that's been kind of ineffective. First of all, there's a lot of research that says that the Federal Reserve is actually more effective at controlling inflation and employment if they are independent, meaning the only people that oversee the Federal Reserve right now is Congress. There's no judicial or executive branch oversight for them. It's probably going to stay that way. There will certainly be a lot of rhetoric and talk in the media and expression of dissatisfaction with the Fed's decision, but it's unlikely that the Fed is actually going to be influenced by Donald Trump's presidency. If we look real quick at what interest rates are doing, you can see that there have been some changes. What those changes are, if we look back to, this is on Thursday, let's go back, Wednesday, Tuesday of this week. You see, it continues to be the case that interest rates would need to see significant weakness in economic data and a stronger move toward lower inflation for any real progress. So that's on Tuesday as interest rates jumped back above 7%. You can see here on Wednesday, if there was a reason rates were able to hold ground, it was the bond market's favorable reaction to the consumer price index number, which was moderately cooler but not really to any major degree. It just wasn't hotter. So that kind of allowed the status quo to maintain. When we look at what happened on Thursday, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, gave a talk at a Dallas chamber event and answered some questions and echoed comments from other Fed speakers regarding the pace of Fed rate cuts, where he basically said, look, the Fed's not going to cut rates probably as fast as they have been or as fast as they were telling people they were going to just a few months ago. So basically saying, look, we think we're in a good spot. We will cut rates or raise rates if we need to, but we're not going to be doing as much as fast as what we were telling people just a few months ago. And so where are we at with the mortgage interest rate? Well, you can see here back in October of 2022, we were at 7.09. 2 years later, we're pretty much at the same exact spot. And for most of those 2 years, there are some peaks and valleys you can see in here, but these are not really meaningful peaks and values. You have a swing of 0.75% up and down in some cases, but for the most part, for the last 2 years, we've been sitting at 7%. So you have some people who've bought down to rates in the high fives, other people who took a par rate in the low sevens, and kind of everything in between. But if you're waiting for the interest rate to decrease, should you be putting off a purchase or a sale if you expect that to happen, or if you think the interest rate's going to increase? What should you be doing? It really depends on if you're going to be purchasing another home. So if you're waiting to sell your house because you think interest rates are going to go down, but you're going to be purchasing another home, that's probably going to be a wash, because you're going to be selling in an environment that has more demand, but you're going to be purchasing in an environment that has more demand. So you're not likely to see any real tangible gain one way or the other. If you're going to be selling your house, getting rid of an investment property, if you're going to be selling your house and relocating to a different market and moving into a rental property, then you may very well be better off by waiting until maybe the second or third quarter of 2025, because the expectation is that rates will drift down a little bit. So by holding off a few months and waiting to sell, you could be selling in a higher demand environment where affordability issues have eased a little bit, so buyers could afford to pay more for your home, and there would be more buyers in the market. Ultimately, if you're going to be selling your home and purchasing another home, you're probably fine waiting or doing something sooner, because any advantage you have as a buyer is going to be wiped out when you go to sell, or any advantage you have as a seller is going to be wiped out when you go to buy if we have a change in market dynamics. So if you have a specific scenario that's unique, like you want to purchase an investment property and maintain your current home, or anything like that, give me a shout. We can work through your scenario one-on-one and find out exactly what's going to be the best timing and the best situation for you. I'm Don Harkins with Don Harkins Realty, Don Harkins Mortgage Team, and Sea-Dog Property Management. Thanks for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe for more videos on market updates, interesting projects, and cool listings in the Central Florida and Space Coast. Take care.